Joe, I wish I could come in here and say I can't believe it, but South Florida kind of warned us that this could happen after beating top 25 Boise State and dominating them a week ago. South Florida goes into Gainesville and knocks off the Florida Gators. When you recap this game and you look back on it, what are your thoughts?
So I do want to give flowers to USF, but I want to save that for the back end part of this conversation. Just to very clearly state this, though, I have a lot of confidence that USF is going to be the G5 representative, or at the very least, they're going to be in the running for it. This game isn't the only evidence. The Boise State performance that you just referenced was a ton of evidence that this team has every single layer that we look for in an unexpectedly dominant G5 team. But we have to talk about Florida, man, because this year was supposed to be the year. This year was the year that Billy Napier was going to take this team with a loaded front seven, a solid offensive line, and an uber-talented quarterback with weapons all over the place. It was supposed to be the year that they shocked everybody, maybe went 9-3, went to the college football playoff, finished in the top 5 of the SEC. Everything was supposed to come together. And I'm not trying to downplay USF, Blake, but this is not a game a team like that is supposed to lose. They looked so sloppy, and all of the same issues and problems. I feel like we're talking about Alabama right now like we did last week. All of the same issues and problems that have plagued this team in the past came back to bite them in the ass. Penalties, mistakes, special teams miscues, not tackling when you need to rally to the football. The final drive was the only example that we need to point to when Isaac broke away and set up this team in eventual field goal range. Blake, I don't know where this team goes from here. I hate to do the Billy Napier is done speech, but I really don't know how they're supposed to recover.
So there's a couple of things. Now, I don't, you know, what we try to do when you and I come in here is talk about the winner first. And I want to talk about the winner first, right? Because I think that South Florida did some really good things. I thought that they showed that they had a lot of courage to go for it on fourth down. They really took it to Florida when it was 3rd and short. They did a lot of really good things. But, Joe, here's the thing. Whether you want to take it for Florida, you want to take it for South Florida, it really doesn't bother me how you want to read this. But the God's honest truth was, in the last 2 weeks, South Florida has only given up, on average, 11.5 points in the first 2 games versus ranked opponents. The second half of the game is where we got to start with this, ironically, because I thought in the first half, both teams had really long sustained drives. And what they really did was they ran the clock down. So there wasn't a lot of possessions between the both of them. So you got a really close game early. But, Joe, the second half is where South Florida showed, ironically, in my humble opinion, that they might have a little bit more depth, they might be better coached, and they cared more. Let me explain. South Florida in the second half forced a 3-and-out, an interception, a 7-play punt. Then you have the safety. Joe, they lost by 2. Florida lost 18-16. They lost by 2. That would be the critical turning point of the game. They would have a 20-yard TD drive after a turnover from South Florida. Then they would have 3 straight punts and 3-and-outs. Outside of going 20 yards for a touchdown, they got dominated. They got physically dominated in the second half. The special teams miscues, how many times are we going to talk about Billy Napier and special teams miscues? Whether it's players with the same number on the field at the same time, or whether you can't get a snap down. Joe, punt, 20-yard touchdown, special teams miscue, 3-and-out, 3-and-out, 3-and-out. They got dominated on their own field. And for that, what South Florida has done the last 2 weeks in this coaching staff, what they've done the last 2 weeks is nothing short of incredible. They have buy-in and culture. And I thought I saw a team in the second half for Florida who didn't have an answer for getting punched in the mouth. Secondly, Byron Brown, welcome to the big show, because now everybody knows who you are. Joey went 23 of 36 for 263 and a touchdown. But the big thing is he had 17 carries for 66 yards. Every time that his team needed a big play, he put the entire team on his back and he made it. The dominance defensively in the second half and Brown's performance in the second half led them to the win.
I'm a big fan of Brown. By the way, I don't know if I'm coming in through a little shaky. I've got the wonderful internet signal in my top left, but I've been a fan of Brown, and he's been a guy that I've talked about with some buddies in the scouting area for a year now. One of those players that you have on like your list of guys that's, hey, watch out, this player could be unexpectedly good. He's somebody that also has had portal interest in the past, and good for him for sticking at South Florida to stick around and to accomplish what he just did. He is the exact type of G5 quarterback that a program like USF needs to run the table, to go undefeated, to do a Cincinnati type of a run where they get to the college football playoff. You remember back to Desmond Ridder, a mobile guy who made some big plays, a big physical dude who was able to help that Cincinnati team get as far as they did when they beat Notre Dame that year. I think that with Brown and with some of these playmakers, this USF squad can do some damage. I think that they're probably going to lose to Miami, but a one-loss USF team gets into the college football playoff. Here's the one layer, and this is not an original thought. Golish, the head coach for USF,
Yes.
fits perfectly for Florida if Billy Napier gets fired.
I saw a tweet that somebody said, did Billy Napier just lose to the next Florida head coach?
And it's really absurd, and I think that it would be really nuts if that's how this thing transpires. But he couldn't be a more perfect candidate. He's at a Florida school. He was at UCF with Heupel, and he was at Tennessee with Heupel. He knows the Florida region, and he also has coached in the SEC. That translates easier than it can. The utmost irony for what could happen with Billy Napier, Blake, is if he's fired and this ends up being his replacement. It would be nuts.
I'm going to get to that in just a second. I want to get to Florida, but this is kind of staying on Billy.
Yep.
Joe, they scored two touchdowns that got called back by penalty. They had 11 penalties for 103 yards. Two touchdowns came off the board. Two. They have special teams issues. And to be honest with you, Joe, I know a lot of people want to point to them defensively. No. I mean, how many field goals are you going to force in short field situations? Joe, how many 3-and-outs in the second half does this offense have to have before your defense is just getting worn out and they give up a late game field goal? I mean, that's what it really was. Joe, 11 penalties for 103 yards. That is absolutely absurd. Taking two touchdowns off the board. What I feel like here for Florida, they were not the less talented team here. People are going to say, oh, well, South Florida, they're not less talented. Joe, they're running the ball for over 5 yards a carry. They're trying to do too much with DJ Lagway. Way too much. They're trying to be too cute in some of the things that they're doing. Billy just cannot find a way to get out of his own way. This team, when they constantly lose these level of games, can't find ways to get out of their own way. The malpractice in overtime. Last year versus Tennessee, some of the things that happened with Florida a season ago. Now, I get that DJ Lagway was a true freshman. What's your excuse now? What is your excuse now? Because there is no Caleb Banks not playing. It's not an excuse. Your defense did enough for you to win that football game. They gave up 18 points after you did nothing in the second half. Nothing. And I see a team that, quite honestly, offensively, for Billy, his own downfall may just be him and what he's doing from a play calling aspect. I don't understand what they're trying to do. I have no clue what they're trying to do. You have what should be to you not an inferior opponent, but a lesser opponent than you. And you're getting away from running the football 6-7 yards per carry in the first half. Same in the second half with Jaden Ball. I don't get it. And I got to be real with you. I think DJ made really bad decisions, very bad, critical decisions. The last thing I would say, Joe, they looked abysmal on third down. In every critical situation, they could not convert. So I say all that to say this. You can blame the players, you can blame the staff, you can blame Scott Strickland, the AD of Florida. It doesn't matter who you blame. The bottom line truth is this. This one's on Billy. It's on Billy. Because you can have all the excuses that you want when all this has happened. This is year 4, Joe. It's year 4. And my question becomes, now that Billy is 20-20 in his first just in his 40 games at Florida, do you wear this one? And Joe, they have an unbelievable chance to turn around this week and go into Baton Rouge and win. I will remind Florida fans of one thing. 7 years ago, LSU lost to Troy, humiliated at home. They turned around the next week and beat you. So your season's not over. Joe, what I would also say here too is they got to figure it out quickly, but a national title contender lost to Northern Illinois last year. You're not done, but you're staring down the barrel of a double gauge shotgun here. And what are you going to do with it? Because, Joe, I got to be real with you. I'm just telling you for some things that I know. After what happened last year with LSU and Florida and the comparisons between BK and Billy Napier, nobody wants to put the death nail in that coffin more than Brian Kelly this week.
I think that we have to talk about what that shotgun looks like that's being pointed at them right now. Because, yes, there is a world for them to bounce back. Well, I don't think anyone in the modern version of college football is truly dead after we watched Notre Dame get to the college football playoff after losing to Northern Illinois. The difference, though...
More than the playoff, I mean, the national title.
Right. The difference between Notre Dame and Florida in this situation is that Notre Dame had a really favorable schedule, so they had a lot of time to figure out their issues. Forget the fact that they had an easy schedule to work through. They had all of that available space against beatable opponents to figure out how they can prepare and to adjust. Florida doesn't have that. This was supposed to be the game to figure out your issues. Their next game is against LSU. They then have Miami, Texas, Texas A&M. They also have Georgia, FSU, Ole Miss, and Tennessee. FSU was possibly an easy game for them. Now that's not even close to the case because FSU has rebounded aggressively.
They scored 70 points. They could have scored 150.
Yeah. And on top of this, they have to go to Lexington, and Billy Napier is 1-2 against Kentucky, and Mississippi State's not the walkover that everybody thought that they were. This is an impossibly hard schedule. I think I will say this, though. If you can use this loss the same way that Notre Dame used theirs against Northern Illinois as a galvanizing moment, a moment to rally the team and to say, guys, we can't let those mistakes happen. We can't let any of those errors happen. I thought Notre Dame was done and dead last year, Blake. I thought that they were completely cooked. There was no survivability. There was no way for them to get right after the way that they played against Northern Illinois. But they looked inward and they looked in the mirror and they realized that they had to change something. If Billy Napier is able to rally the troops and get the group to completely lock in focus and to rally around this moment, if they go 9-3 this year, and USF does end up being the representative for the G5, getting to the playoff is accomplishable. But they can't slip up. Like they can't. Their losses have to be by single scores. I know sounds like I'm making excuses for Billy Napier and whatnot. I don't think any of this is actually going to come to fruition, but there's still technically a path.
There is. I mean, but in that path, Joe, you can't have what you had yesterday. You're getting field goals instead of touchdowns.
Yeah.
Field goals instead of touchdowns. And it's not like you're taking off Lagway's touchdowns. If Lagway's hitting a massive bomb and it's getting called back for holding, that's one thing. Joe, they're running the ball in and they're having simple penalties and simple holding calls. Joe, listen, at some point you got to look in the mirror for a culture and a program and a team. And quite frankly, all of the small things that they can, like the things that continue to pile up, seem petty, but they also seem like an undisciplined football team to me too. very undisciplined. Can you figure it out? But Joe, the God's honest truth is you got dominated in the second half, and every time that you got in field goal or the red zone, you couldn't convert for 7. They might have left 11 to maybe even 17 points on the board, and you can't have that. So we'll see. All right.